Let's break down the fear of judgment. This isn't some primary emotion or innate personality trait. It's a composite construction assembled from several parasitic mechanisms working in sync. The fear of judgment is shame in standby mode. You're not actually afraid of judgment as an event. You're afraid of activating the internal shame mechanism that's already installed and running. External judgment is just a trigger that launches the program, "You're wrong, you're defective, you're unworthy." This program doesn't originate from other people's words. It's already sitting inside you, waiting for confirmation. That's why the fear of judgment isn't about other people, although people love to judge because it compensates for their own fear of being judged, and also a cheap way to raise their rank in the hierarchy without doing anything significant. It's about the fact that you've already agreed with the verdict they handed you in childhood, and now you're terrified they'll announce it publicly. This is the fear of being exposed for what you already know about yourself. The fear of judgment only works within a hierarchical system. If you perceive another person as standing above you in some invisible pyramid, their opinion gains weight. Not factual weight, but status weight. You're not afraid of judgment from a specific person. You're afraid of judgment from someone who supposedly has the right to evaluate you. And in my case, that was pretty much everyone. But usually judgment from a random stranger doesn't trigger the same reaction as judgment from a parent, boss, partner, or authority figure. It's not about the content of the judgment, it's about your internal power map where certain people have access to your value and others don't. The fear of judgment is agreement that someone else has the right to determine your worth. It's voluntary transfer of power. The system teaches this transfer early, installing an architecture where value is always assigned from above, so the fear maintains itself even when no one is actually watching. And parents have administrator rights in that operating system because they were the ones who installed it into your brain. I was talking about this in another video a few days ago. You've probably heard that fear of judgment comes from low self-confidence, that if you just believe in yourself more, the fear would disappear. This is a convenient lie that turns a structural problem into a personal defect. You don't fear judgment because you lack confidence. You lack confidence because someone installed a program that says your value is determined by others. Confidence isn't something you build through affirmations or positive thinking. It's what remains when you remove the program that generates the doubt. The system sells you endless self-improvement to fix your insecurity while leaving the actual mechanism untouched. The shame program, the hierarchy, and the artificial scarcity. The system creates the illusion that acceptance is a limited resource you have to earn, that love, respect, the right to exist are distributed not automatically but based on performance evaluation, and other people conduct the evaluation. The fear of judgment is the fear of losing access to this scarce resource. If they judge you, they'll reject you, kick you out of the circle of the worthy, strip you of your right to connection, support, safety. But this entire construction stands on a false premise that acceptance can be lost or earned in the first place. It's like being afraid someone will take away your air. The fear only works if you've agreed that air is distributed by ration cards. When you fear judgment, here's what happens. You anticipate someone else's evaluation. That evaluation is automatically perceived as the truth because shame already agrees with it and because hierarchy has already granted them the authority to pronounce the verdict. You start correcting your behavior to avoid activating shame. The behavioral correction gets perceived as reasonable caution or social adaptation. What it actually is, self-censorship controlled by fear of exposure. You're not afraid of other people's opinions. You're afraid of confronting what you actually think about yourself in shame mode, which you usually manage not to notice. The fear of judgment disguises itself as social competence. They tell you, it's normal to consider others' opinions, that's maturity. But judgment is never about understanding or correction. It doesn't carry data, it only assigns rank. Fear only emerges where there is internal doubt, where you yourself aren't sure of your right to be who you are. And the system deliberately cultivates this doubt so you'll always remain in self-monitoring and self-limitation mode. People who fear judgment are controllable without direct violence. They don't need an overseer. They control themselves, anticipating possible disapproval. They censor their own thoughts, emotions, actions to match imagined standards. They compete for approval instead of asking why the fuck they need it in the first place. The fear of judgment is a mechanism of self-suppression embedded in the psyche and passed off as being reasonable. The question is whether you're ready to acknowledge that other people's judgment has nothing to do with your actual value, or whether you still believe it's determined from outside. When you finally see the mechanism, fear turns into comedy.